The Architect coaching archetype might be the biggest waste of coaching points in CFB 26, or is it secretly overpowered? It promises XP bonuses for your players, but when you use it, nothing happens. Your players barely get better during the season. But what if the archetype isn't broken? What if one hidden setting is making it look terrible when it's actually amazing? In this video, I'm about to show you why Architect fails so badly, and the one simple fix that completely changes everything. So player development is pretty big in Dynasty mode, and the problem with Architect isn't that XP bonuses don't matter, it's that it barely gives you any XP bonuses at all. I've been frustrated with this archetype ever since the game came out, especially since last year, it was pretty helpful. In theory, it's supposed to give your players extra XP during the season, but when I use it, my players get maybe 1 or 2 extra skill points all year. Then I made a video about the manual progression penalty bug. This setting controls the XP penalty your players get when you have manual progression on. I showed that the default 25% penalty makes players barely progress at all during the season. That's when I saw this comment. And I realized I'd never tested this properly. What if the Architect bonuses work fine, but the default settings just hide them? What if there's a simple fix that makes this archetype actually pretty good? I decided to put this to the test. Here's exactly what I did. 4 different Dynasty setups, each run 5 times to get better data. Same controlled variables each time. The team I used was Michigan. I could test without Architect using a custom coach, then with Architect using their real coach. I used the same coordinators for every test, same schedule using forced win and forced loss to control results, injuries and wear and tear were turned off, and the same results in season, an undefeated regular season, a loss in the conference championship, and a loss in the first playoff game. The only things I changed were whether I had Architect abilities and what manual progression penalty I used. For Architect, I first focused on Tier 1 and Tier 2 abilities for quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and offensive line, because those were the upgrades the Michigan coach had. Tier 1 gives extra XP for 3-game winning streaks, and Tier 2 gives extra XP for hitting goals during games. So Test 1 was no Architect, 0% manual progression penalty. You'll see that they get a decent amount of in-season XP. My starters averaged 6.067 XP points during the season, including my QB getting 15 points, and even a right tackle getting 10 points. That's not bad. Players were actually getting better week by week. Test 2, Architect abilities plus 0% manual progression penalty. Same setup, but now with XP bonuses turned on. The result? 8.2 average XP points. That's 35% more. Look here, my quarterback even had 17 XP points, and 1 running back and all my starting O-linemen had double-digit points. It looks like the Architect bonuses actually work when progression isn't broken. But let's confirm. Alright, Test 3, no Architect and 25% manual progression penalty. This is how most people play because that's the default setting. The result? 0.267 average XP points. Notice the difference here. We have no XP points. Only our quarterback had a few points, no one else. The 25% penalty destroys about 96% of all progression. But let's see if Architect makes any difference with this. Test 4, Architect abilities plus 25% manual progression penalty. This is what most players experience with Architect. The result? 1.2 average XP points. You'll notice our quarterback got a few more points, and our O-linemen would usually end up with 1 or 2 points, but nothing to our running backs or wide receivers or tight ends. We see a little bit of impact from Architect here, but going from an average of 0.26 points to 1.2 points is basically nothing. But maybe you're thinking, what if Architect is just saving up these points for the offseason? Maybe we'll see the real benefit during training results. I tested that too. Here's what I found. Very little change here. At first glance, it doesn't appear Architect impacts offseason training XP. But let's look at the 25% progression penalty. We are seeing a small increase here, but I'm not sure it's enough to say Architect really helps offseason progression. That tiny difference is likely just random variation in how players performed. So no, I don't believe Architect is stockpiling points for later. It's just not doing much at all with the default settings. Here's what this testing shows. Architect is pretty much pointless with the default 25% manual progression penalty. The penalty setting is so harsh that even XP bonuses can't overcome it. You basically get no benefit with Tier 1 and Tier 2. But if you want Architect to actually work, set the manual progression penalty to 0%. Suddenly, those XP bonuses become meaningful. Players get 35% more skill points during the season. That's pretty big. This coaching archetype isn't broken. The default settings just make it pretty much useless. But what if the real value in Architect isn't the XP bonuses at all? What if it's in Tier 3 and Tier 4, the chance for a skill cap to be removed? Tier 3 Architect gives a chance to remove those skill caps when players level up. That means a player could go beyond their normal limits. They could get faster, stronger, or smarter than they were supposed to. I did some testing on this. Out of all the times players level up, the skill cap removal only happened about 20% of the time. That's 1 in 5 players. But here's where it gets interesting. I also tested Tier 4, which is put a ring on it, chance to increase best skill cap with a conference or national title. I noticed that with Tier 4 active, skill cap removal went from about 20% of the time to 35% of the time. That's a pretty big jump. Even better, some players had multiple skill caps removed, meaning they could break through several limits at once. Now, is this worth it if Tier 1 and Tier 2 are getting nerfed by the manual progression penalty? I'm honestly not sure. It all depends on how much you value breaking through those skill caps versus investing those coaching points elsewhere. But if your league uses 0% penalty or auto progression, then you get the best of both worlds, the XP bonuses and the skill cap removal. That's when Archetype becomes really powerful. But overall, this explains why most people, myself included at one time, think Archetype is terrible. They're testing it with settings that kill progression, but change just one setting, and Archetype becomes a legitimate choice for player development. So here's a recap. Here's what you need to know. If you run a Dynasty and want to use Archetype, change your manual progression penalty to 0%. The default 25% setting makes this build almost useless. If you're in an online Dynasty and can't change that setting, try using auto progression instead of manual. This lets you get those in-season XP points, and the computer will upgrade your players for you. This allows you to take advantage of Archetype's perks. Remember, auto progression works the same as a 0% penalty, so you'll still get that roughly 35% boost from Archetype in season. You can always swap your setting back to manual progression during the off-season, so you can manually upgrade your players during training results. The Archetype goes from being one of the worst to actually pretty good just by changing one setting. Most people never change that setting, so they never see what Archetype can really do. There are likely other secrets we haven't found yet in Dynasty mode. What should I test next? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.